Stop looking at the scoreboard and start looking at the soul of the game, because modern football just tried to sell you a lie wrapped in a 7-2 thrashing of a collapsed Newcastle United. Last night at the Camp Nou, the spreadsheet warriors found their new messiah in Raphinha, a man who runs like he's trying to outrun his own shadow and produces numbers that make Wall Street analysts weep with joy. 2 goals, 3 assists, a 92% pass completion rate in the final third. It looks like a masterclass on paper, doesn't it? But if you actually have eyes, if you actually remember what it felt like to have your heart skip a beat when a Brazilian winger touched the ball, you know Raphinha is nothing more than a high-functioning tactical drone. He's the ultimate product of a sanitized, robotic era where work rate is valued over wonder and where pressing triggers have replaced the pure, unadulterated magic of a street footballer. You're being told this is the evolution of the game, but in reality, it's the funeral of Joe Bonito. We live in a world where fans celebrate a heat map more than a nutmeg. Raphinha against Newcastle was a display of peak efficiency, a cog in Hansi Flick's machine that functioned exactly as programmed. He pressed, he tracked back, he occupied the half spaces, and he finished the chances that a disorganized, jet-lagged Newcastle defense practically handed to him on a silver platter. The English media is already calling it a legendary performance, but let's be brutally honest. Against the low block that's actually awake, Raphinha often looks like a man trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with boxing gloves on. He lacks the one thing that separates a great employee from a true king of the Camp Nou: aura. When Raphinha gets the ball, you expect a cross or a calculated cutback. When Ronaldinho Gaucho got the ball, the entire stadium stood up because they knew the laws of physics were about to be violated. Comparing Raphinha to the real number 10s and 11s of the past is an insult to the history of this sport. Take Ronaldinho in 2005 at the Santiago Bernabeu. He didn't need 3 assists from a systemic overload to be the best player on the planet. He took the ball at the halfway line, looked at Sergio Ramos, one of the greatest defenders in history, and decided to end his career right then and there. He didn't run because a coach told him to cover 5 kilometers in the first half. He ran because he saw a gap in reality that only he could fill. When Ronaldinho danced, the world stopped. When Raphinha scores, we just check our fantasy football apps. One is a cultural phenomenon that made even Real Madrid fans stand up and applaud their own destruction. The other is a very expensive, very fast athlete who happens to play for Barcelona. The spreadsheet generation will argue that Raphinha's intensity without the ball makes him superior to the legends who walk during games. That is the ultimate lie of modern coaching. Ronaldinho didn't need to run 10 miles a game because he controlled the space with his mind. He was a predator, not a marathon runner. He possessed an unpredictability that made defenders physically sick. Look at that goal against Chelsea in 2005. No backlift, surrounded by 3 blue shirts, just a little toe poke that left Petersek frozen like a statue. That wasn't a tactical solution. It was a glitch in the matrix. Raphinha, in that same position, would have looked for a safe pass or a corner-winning deflection. He plays within the lines. Ronaldinho drew the lines himself. Let's look at the legend meter for a winger like Raphinha versus the king of the Bruxo. First touch under pressure. For Raphinha, it's functional, usually setting up a safe second touch. For Ronaldinho, a first touch was a weapon of humiliation. He could deaden a ball falling from the stratosphere while being hacked by 2 defenders, and somehow the ball would end up exactly where he needed it to go. Flair and magic. It's not even a contest. Raphinha's flair is a choreographed step-over that ends in a predictable cross. Ronaldinho was a jazz musician playing a sport. He invented moves on the fly because he was bored with how easy the game was for him. He played with a smile because he knew something we didn't, that the ball was his friend, not a tool for a KPI. Football IQ in the chaos is where the gap becomes a canyon. Modern players like Raphinha are brilliant at following a script. They know exactly where to be when the ball is on the opposite flank. But what happens when the script is torn up? When the game becomes chaotic and the system breaks down? That's where the legends thrive and the system bots fail. Ronaldinho excelled in the chaos. He was the architect of the impossible. In 2006 against Milan, he played a no-look pass with so much backspin and curve it felt like he was playing pool, not football. He didn't do it because it was the statistically optimal play. He did it because he saw a line of sight that didn't exist for anyone else on the pitch. And then there is the aura, the fear factor. When Newcastle walked onto that pitch, they were scared of Barcelona's system, not Raphinha the individual. They were overwhelmed by the collective press. But when teams faced Ronaldinho, they were scared of the man. They were terrified of being the next clip on a most humiliating dribbles VHS tape. Defenders would back off him, giving him 10 yards of space, because they were afraid of being nutmegged into retirement. That is aura. Raphinha doesn't have it. He's a threat, but he isn't a nightmare. He's the guy who does his homework and gets an A. Ronaldinho is the guy who shows up late, drinks a coffee, and changes the world. We are watching the death of the individual genius in favor of the industrial athlete. The media wants to gaslight you into believing that because Raphinha's numbers are high, he belongs in the same conversation as the Brazilian greats. He doesn't. He is a very good player in a very good system. But the second you take him out of that structure, the second you ask him to be the sole creative spark against a world-class defense, the cracks start to show. He is the ultimate flat-track bully of the analytics era. He'll destroy a crumbling Newcastle, but he'll never make the Bernabeu stand up and cheer for him. He'll never score a goal that makes a kid in a favela or a suburb in London pick up a ball and try to be like him. He is efficient. He is productive. But he is fundamentally boring. And in the church of football, being boring is the ultimate sin. The problem with the modern game is that we've traded the beautiful game for the efficient game, and Raphinha is the poster child for this gray, robotic transition. You can keep your spreadsheets and your expected assists, because they will never capture the moment Ronaldinho received a cross from Xavi against Villarreal, cushioned it on his chest with the grace of a ballet dancer, and launched himself into a bicycle kick that felt like it stopped time. That wasn't a high-percentage shot. That wasn't a calculated tactical maneuver. It was a man deciding that the laws of gravity didn't apply to him that afternoon. Raphinha, in that same position, would have looked for a cutback to an oncoming midfielder because the data says that's the optimal play. That is the difference between an employee and an artist. Let's talk about the myth of physical dominance and work rate. The media loves to point out how much Raphinha runs, how he tracks back to help his fullback, and how he never stops pressing. Since when did we start judging Brazilian wingers by how well they defend? Ronaldinho didn't need to track back because he kept the entire opposing team pinned in their own half out of sheer terror. If you gave him an inch of space, he would turn your world upside down. He had a physical engine that was fueled by joy and late-night samba, not sports science and GPS trackers. He was strong, impossible to knock off the ball, and possessed a burst of pace that left world-class defenders looking like they were running in quicksand. Raphinha has pure pace, sure, but it's a straight line. Predictable speed. It's track and field pace. Ronaldinho had chaos pace. The ability to change direction and rhythm in a heartbeat, leaving ankles broken and reputations ruined. When we look at weak foot and lethal finishing, the gap only widens. Raphinha is a clinical finisher when the system creates a clear opening. But he's predictable. He wants to cut inside on that left foot. Every defender in the world knows the script. Ronaldinho didn't have a weak foot. He had two magic wands. He could pick a pass or blast a shot with either foot from any angle. He was a master of the paradox, the ability to do the exact opposite of what the entire stadium expected. That 2005 goal against Chelsea wasn't just a goal, it was a psychological hit on the entire English defense. Peter Cech, John Terry, Ricardo Carvalho, legends of the game, all reduced to spectators because they couldn't process a man dancing in front of them before stabbing the ball into the corner. And then there's the big game clutch factor. Raphinha shines when the sun is out and the opposition is crumbling. He's the king of the 7-2 thrashing. But where is he when the lights are brightest and the pressure is suffocating? Ronaldinho carried a broken Barcelona on his back and gave them their identity back. He didn't just play in big games. He owned them. He won the Champions League, the World Cup, and the Ballon d'Or by being the absolute focal point of every team he played for. He was the sun that the entire footballing galaxy revolved around. Raphinha is just a very bright satellite orbiting a star. He is a piece of the puzzle, whereas Ronaldinho was the person putting the puzzle together. The English fans and the stat nerds love Raphinha because he's easy to measure. You can put him in an Excel sheet and feel smart. You can't measure Ronaldinho with a spreadsheet. How do you quantify a no-look pass that deconstructs the AC Milan defense? How do you calculate the XG of a man who scores from a free kick against England from 40 yards out just because he noticed Seaman was off his line? You can't. And that's what scares the modern analyst. They hate what they can't control, and they hate the unpredictability that made the Brazilian greats untouchable. They want a game of checkers. We want a game of wizards. Raphinha is a system player. He is the product of a specific coaching philosophy that demands high energy and low risk. He is the perfect soldier for Hansi Flick. But soldiers don't get statues. Generals do. Ronaldinho was a general who led with a smile and a shrapnel of pure genius. He played for PSG when they were a mess and made them Musi TV. He went to Milan as a veteran and still had more aura in one leg than the rest of the league combined. He didn't need a specific trigger to be great. He was greatness itself. So, the next time you see Raphinha rack up 5-goal contributions against a Newcastle side that couldn't defend a park bench, Don't let the media fool you. Don't let them tell you he's the next great Barcelona number 11. He's a placeholder. He's a very effective, very hard-working placeholder. But he will never be the Bruxo. He will never be the reason a stadium in Madrid stands up to applaud. He will never be the man who made the world fall in love with football again. Raphinha is what happens when you take the soul out of the game and replace it with a battery. He's efficient, he's productive, and he's completely forgettable. In 20 years, we'll still be talking about Ronaldinho's dance at Stamford Bridge. In 20 years, Raphinha will just be a line of data in a database that no one bothers to open. The legend meter doesn't lie. Efficiency is for machines. Magic is for immortals.